Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Zenitsu, and you're listening to the Digi Talks podcast, the show that covers various topics from news to meta developments and everything in between for the fine folks who love the Digimon trading card game. Just as a quick reminder, I do stream this live over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, and it's also uploaded as a YouTube video on the YouTube channel of Zenitsu, while also being on various different podcasting platforms like Spotify for your viewing and listening pleasure. Today, I'm with my co-host Teddy as usual, and we're going to be talking about the brand new ban and restriction list that Bandai just dropped on us and what that means for the game going forward. But before we start that, we do have some more regional data to go over. Regional season is nearing its end. There's 2 more North American regionals, and regional season's basically done in November, right around when BT14 is going to start up. So that's going to be really fun. I'm looking forward to that set, especially now with the ban and restriction changes, to see how our BT14 is going to differ from, well, the Japanese one because of the ban and restriction changes. But Top Cut had an online regional. It had 406 players, and there's really almost nothing new except for the fact that Mervaloop ended up actually topping. So that was the only new deck to be able to break into top 16s. Everything else has been kind of known. So going over that really quickly so we could get into the fun stuff. First place was All Force. Second place was Hunters. Third place was Black War Greymon. This was the OTK variant that we saw every now and then. Then fourth place was Hunters. Fifth place was Greymon, Red Black Greymon, more specifically Black War Greymon, as that is the more popular version, just because the control options are just too good to not use. Then 6th place was Shine, 7th place was Shine, 8th place was Hunters, 9th place was Bloomlord, 10th place, there's that Mervaloop that we mentioned before. I don't think the Mervaloop was doing anything different. It was just a player actually wanted to play Mervaloop and was good enough on the deck to be able to make it to top 16. Good on them. Shows that purple is still very, very strong of a color, and like it just has some insane tools. Then 11th place is Hunters, 12th place is Bloom, 13th Blue Flare, 14th Bloom Lord, 15th Royal Knights, 16th Blue Flare again. So the top 16 breakdown, we had 4 Hunters, 3 Bloom Lords, 2 Shines, 2 Blue Flares, 1 Ulforce, 1 Black War Greymon OTK, 1 Black War Greymon X Antibody, 1 Mervaloop, and 1 Royal Knights. So pretty diverse. It doesn't seem like much is really topping outside of like these kind of 10 known decks. I did like a top 8 last week. So I think like there's just a couple of other handful of decks that tend to sneak in a little bit more than some of the others. I know Alphamon and All Force are definitely on that list of like decks that sneak in a little bit more than certain others. But I think this is a pretty solid meta as we're nearing its end. There's still a lot of flexibility and versatility to what we have, and I'm excited to see if a Ghost Games deck actually in the closing could make it to a top 16. Just so we could say that, hey, look, the Ghost Games decks are actually kind of okay. But
Funny.
yeah, I'm not expecting that. I will try my hardest with Jellymon, and that's about all I can say. I'm actually almost considering still not playing Jellymon and just playing Cross Hearts, just because I've been practicing that deck, just because I still like it. I think it's fun, and I've been tweaking and refining the build a little bit more for the current environment, and that might be my other option. So I'm debating on Jellymon or Cross Hearts. I don't know if you're playing in any of the other ones or not, but I'm only playing in one.
I think I'm only playing in one as well. Yes, I believe one. And I'll most likely be playing Gamamon, so wish me luck.
Heck yeah. um, so yeah, that's where the current meta is. Nothing's really changed, and some things are still squeaking into tops that haven't really gotten a top before. So all fun from here on out. And I think that with the new announcement to the ban and restriction list, things are definitely kind of heated in the community. I've been seeing more negative comments than more positive ones, but that's just, anytime anything is announced, whether it's actually good or bad objectively, there's just always going to be outcry. Nobody's ever going to be happy 100% of the time. But like taking a step back, I actually kind of like this ban and restriction list. My only problem with it, which is usually the problem I have with all ban and restrictions, is I wish they would have done more. But sometimes less is more, and that'll be determined later. So we got over the weekend basically an announcement for this announcement, and now we got this announcement on Tuesday, October 17th of
Right,
2023.
bright and early in the morning too.
Yes, I woke up, saw it, rushed to work. Unfortunately, I had to work, so I didn't get a whole lot of time to read a lot of the comments. And then towards the later half of the day, I got to read more of the comments, and I was just like, okay, these are some really hot takes, and they're not like good hot takes half the time. Um, but anyway, so Bandai announced their ban and restriction list, and we got 5 cards added to the ban list. So if you want to go over them, you're more than welcome to.
Let me see. So let's see. So they hit us with the very first one, which I mean, I kind of thought this one was kind of a no-brainer. If they weren't going to hit things, at least in purple, because I know this is people will say these tailored towards Japan's list. So you can cry and moan all y'all want. They're not tailored for us. They kind of look at us and they try to hit, two birds with one stone kind of thing because we don't have separate ban lists. So they try their best to hit literally both lists and make it try and unify it like that. So future proofing things. So first one on our list here is the ST06 Purple Gabumon. So this is of course no brainer. They're trying to move away from things that just don't have once per turn effects. The inheritable for this Gabumon is when attacking, trigger draw 1, then trash 1. Every purple deck wants that, and especially since it doesn't have the once per turn clause, it's no brainer. It makes sense. This one is, I mean, it's pretty good in tandem with things like they're even stating it here in their comments. Multiple turns you can use it multiple times in a single turn. That in combination with Gabumon X antibody from EX5, which we don't have, but we'll see that coming next year, right? Yes, next year.
Uh,
Early next year,
e-
January.
yes, early next year is EX5.
So we'll see that stuff there, but in tandem with that, that's their reasoning, which it makes sense. I think it's just fine. Purple got hit really hard this time around, by the way. So if y'all purple haters are not eating good right now, but it's okay. You guys will be just fine coming in this next set. So don't hurt it, don't hate it too hard. But I can understand. I feel y'all.
Yeah, I think
Um,
with Gabumon X, what people don't understand is it's an on play when Digivolve. You look at the top 4 cards of your deck, add 2 cards with a Gabumon or X antibody in their names among them into your hand, and then you get to return the rest of the bottom of your deck. And then if you added a card into your hand, you get to discard 1. So in a lot of purple decks, the draw and discard setup is very real. I've always said that I like draw and discard more than blind mill because you have more control over the setup, especially if you do need a particular setup. So between just Gabumon X antibody and that Gabumon specifically, you could literally move out of raising, Digivolve, basically draw 2, discard 1, or draw 1, discard 1, which is still good. And then you could potentially even think about swinging, draw 1 and discard another one. So off of basically nothing, you've already cycled through like 4 cards of your deck, discarded 2 of them. That's kind of crazy.
off
And
just
then
2 level 3s.
yeah, and then you have like the Garurumon cards where it's just like when Digivolve, draw 1, discard 1. And same thing with Garurumon X antibody, draw 2, discard 2. So like it just starts compounding
Card
the
1.
issue. on just
actually.
how fast the deck can churn through itself because of that card, especially if you start swinging. And believe me, Garurumon is known for swinging multiple times, so you could continuously cycle through your deck and find almost anything you need really quickly.
Yeah, it's just too much. It makes sense. So I'm fine with it. Funnily enough, the very next card is another Gabumon, BT2, purple Gabumon. This one has been used forever in every purple deck, essentially, that like doesn't really have a good like rookie to go with. They just have filler option. This is the filler option always because it's just on deletion, draw two, trash one. Same exact reason as the other one. Essentially, it's just drawing way too much off of level 3. That's insane. Honestly, they drawing two and then trashing one. Like that's literally what they say here. They're like,
Yeah.
this is a little too much for a level 3 inheritable. Like, so they didn't want it. That's their Bandai's main reasoning. But it's just in tandem with a lot of things. It's just too much. It incentivizes just being aggressive early and then not getting any downside. Essentially, yeah, you lose the body, but a lot of times they're doing it on top of Eismon. Hint, hint. Which would what that just those two alone is what 5, 6 cards. Yeah,
It would
5 cards
be just
total
the
that they've
yeah, just those
gone
alone
through.
is draw 5, discard 3.
That's not including like Gabumon X, Antibody, and whatever other shenanigans that we get further in the future. So it's just future proofing. It makes sense. I know, you purple hater people, you purple lovers are gonna love and hate this at the same time because at least your main package didn't get hit, but this sucks. This definitely sucks a lot. But I think it's a necessary hit. Um,
I think also
and
because it's Gabumon, like that only adds to
that
the
synergy
issue.
is insane.
So like we got 2 Gabumons that are purple that are hit, all just to try to stem the amount of cycling that not only just decks using the Garurumon engine use, but because a lot of decks use the Garurumon engine because it is just faster and more consistent to draw and discard than it is to YOLO blind mill and hope
Yeah,
things worked out. Um,
exactly.
but yeah, there's a lot of compounding issues on why these cards more specifically got hit, and everyone was expecting instead of these 2 cards to get hit, Garurumon X
Level
Antibody to get
fours.
hit, which I think would have been a fair hit, but at least like this kind of makes it a little bit harder for that deck to do what it needed or wanted to do in that engine. So I'm okay with it.
I mean,
Because
this list
Gurumon
follows
X
Bandai's
Antibody
normal
is a newer
philosophy.
card, and they didn't
Yeah,
want to obviously hit a newer card.
nah, they don't ever do that. I mean, this list follows Bandai's normal philosophy when it comes to the hit and ban and restricted list. They don't ever hit anything brand new unless very specific circumstances.
They don't hit
They,
anything high rarity.
nothing there. If you look at the list right now, there are no SRs or above that are limited or banned, unless you count promos. But those are not. Those are a different rarity altogether. So um, this list will fall in line with that. So I understand. I still think that they should do some now and then, every now and then. I'm not saying there's anything right now off the top of my head. I do think it makes more sense for the Garurumon X to be hit before because then this hurts a lot of decks, not just that. But I digress. I think it's fine either way. I knew they weren't going to touch the new stuff, so it makes sense for them to go to the older stuff because those are usually the supplemental packages that have been going forever. I mean, what purple deck was not using the Eismon engine?
Yeah.
Like, so it is what it is. Even like you say, like, oh, Balfamon uses the Gizumons. Well, they also use the Eismon engine as well. So it's a no brainer. Um, so now let's see. Shifting away from purple for a little bit, we'll go to. Funnily enough, we were talking about this a while back when we were doing some other tournaments. BT13 Geo Greymon, the yellow red that allows you to, when digivolving, take a tamer from your security that is red or yellow, play it down for free, and then recover. That to me, you don't need to explain this. I feel like just reading that effect, if you don't understand why that card is absolutely insane, you might not understand card value because that card is just absurd.
Yeah,
Um,
and they even state in their description that playing Tamers anywhere from other than the hand is just kind of limiting towards design space and just begging for problems. Although, which is kind of weird because we have a couple of cards
yeah.
that play Tamers from the trash, but I again, more specifically, the security and like just from other areas. It does present its own set of problems towards design space. Most of the time, they actually limit the tamers on what's being brought back. Where Geogreymon is generic, so it's not even just for Shine Greymon that they stated, because yellow vaccines and various other yellow decks tend to abuse the card as well. Even though they would be paying a tiny bit of a premium, just the
They
fact
don't
that
care.
that tamer value will now come out and be a constant thing is it more than makes up for the 3 evolution cost, which I think is like the balancing act between the card. But I think the effect was just the downside to the evolution cost was not that big of a downside to the evolution cost for what you got.
So yeah, it's just too much. Like you were saying earlier, with like there are cards, that do play from the trash. You know what I mean? Some that do tamers, but you also have to think you have to set that up, and that's not something that you can always do because it is at the end of the day luck of the draw.
Yeah.
Like if you draw them, you get them in trash. Okay, he got him, but this one is purely just this is RNG, but you can also manipulate this because you can take cards out of your life. Yellow does this all the time, or put cards into your life with like Geo Gray or like the Rise Greymons, putting Marcuses there, so you can guarantee this effect whenever you want. And this is just too much. This makes sense. The yellow vaccine decks, just like Zenitsu said, being able to just pump out those TKs, get extra memory. It's just a bit too much. I think this one card, three cost evo is inconsequential for what you're getting. Um, like an insane thing. And the Inheritable's not even bad either, by the way. That's actually a pretty decent inheritable, killing off floodgates and things like that. No one really talks about that because the first part is just so absurdly insane. But it does also have an inheritable, which even adds on to the value of the card.
Yeah, which yellow decks generally are the ones that are abusing this more than red, just because having access at that security information already is really nice, so you could gauge what you're going to be looking for and what you could be looking for. And yellow can like my co-host said, he can like start digging into your security, giving you that information. There's a lot of interactions with things coming out and going back into security. It is just a very powerful card, not only just in Shine Greymon, but any yellow deck as well. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I abused it in a yellow recovery deck. Remember that local tournament we played forever ago that we played in
I was playing
the
it in Mastimon.
it's just too good. It just does too much for too little. To be honest, 3 is not enough for how much it
At
does.
an early stage.
Yeah, I mean, a level 4 being able to just play any tamer and it doesn't matter the cost is insane. Um, and of course, it's an impact and shine is just absurd. Um, but then after that, they actually just shift to level 5s now. So we go to EX4 Mock Galgamon. This one kind of came out of nowhere for me, but I understand why. Because once again, this from the English player base, this probably looks really weird because Mirage isn't doing very much for us. But these are not made for us. You have to also account for it. These are made specifically for their meta because they're the ones that are going to get affected by this ASAP. I think they have what? I think 10 days, I think.
Yeah, they have 10
Until
days. In Japan, these go into effect as of October 10th. And for us, these are going into effect October 17th. Or not October,
so
November
27.
17th.
Yeah. So like these are going to hit them faster. So these are their immediate checks to things. So
This one caught me
this,
off guard too. I'm not going to lie.
but I understand it after talking to some players from the Japanese player base and things like that. With the introduction of those the training cards, Mont Galgamon becomes very absurdly good. well, Mirage in general, that deck just becomes very consistently good at just killing you very easily and very efficiently. So one of the reasons why I think this was chosen is literally its when Digivolving effect, first off, is level 4 and lower. That doesn't sound like a lot, but that's really good. That alone is very good for the deck that kills floodgates, that bounces floodgates, any level 4 blockers. It matters. It may not matter a lot in a lot of matchups, but it does matter. Um, then the inheritable alone, that makes it better than all the other Galgamons because you're able to control when this happens. The when attacking, if your opponent has 8 or more cards in hand, unsuspend its Digimon. So the other level 5s have the clause, instead of it saying when attacking, it's just all turns. Once per turn, if your opponent, or if a card is added to your opponent's hand, they get unsuspended.
Which
So
you can
because
miss
you're
the
able to
timing
control
for.
this, correct? Because like you can evolve, then bounce a security or a body on the board, then you basically lose the inheritable for that turn. Whereas this one, you don't lose that. You can use it whenever you want to. So it's just an infinitely better card, and it allows you to OTK a lot faster and harder. So I understand completely why this is the card they chose. If they weren't going to hit the training, they have to hit something from the deck, and this is, I think, a good candidate. If you're not going to hit the level 6 or the trainings,
I think so too, just because, like you said, it is the best out of all of the mocks. The bounce.
and by a large
I
amount, by
played
the way.
mock Galgamon. Um, the bounce actually matters a lot because of the inheritables you're setting up with it. Just because you combine it with the other EX4 line, and you're going to be gaining memory, so you could maintain your turn potentially and make this card basically Evo for 1 because you bounced a floodgate. Now you could gain memory, or like Digivolve for reduced cost with the training card or whatever. And then now,
Surplus
yeah,
memory,
now
if you
you're just surplusing on top of gaining memory. Just because you bounced a Digimon, so that means if you're at a low memory count, you can maintain your turn a lot easier. And then because you're maintaining your turn, then you could Digivolve into Mirage, and then Mirage, now that there's nothing to bounce, will just burn a security. Like, it is just a very, very good card. And I think that, like, if they were this afraid of Mirage, this definitely was the card to hit, because I can't necessarily think the other cards were like that egregious.
No, it's very. I can't think so. That's why I think it's either this or the training. It was one or the other.
And if they hit
Or
one
the egg,
training,
I
they're going to
guess.
have to hit them all. So I definitely
Yeah.
think this was the logical conclusion, because they're not going to hit the SR, and they're not going to hit
No,
the rare Mirage because that card's not really good. It's not really doing a whole lot.
way
So
worse than this. Like, it's
yeah.
way worse than this.
And that's kind of what Bandai stated as well, is like they think that because of the bounce and because you could control the inheritable more, it was just making the deck outperform a lot of other decks that they weren't necessarily anticipating. And it's not like the deck was that bad in Japan either. All the way up until BT15, it was still one of the better decks to play. It was like up there in top 5,
It
if
was
not
like
top 10.
it was literally top 5 actually. Like it was borderline getting to where the top 4, top 3 decks were getting. Like it was just barely out of it with the training boosts added. So
Yeah.
it was very strong, and I mean a deck that makes it one memory efficient and can kill you at the same time. That's, I mean, it makes sense. So I don't hate this. I do hate it because I like the deck. I think it's fun. So it does suck that we
Yeah,
do
but at
lose
least we
the
have
best
the
card.
others. Yeah, at least we have
Yeah,
the other mocks to
you still have
replace it.
comparable replacements, so it's not the worst.
Yeah.
You can still use it at 1, so it's not still not the worst. Um, Now probably the worst one, the biggest hit. We're going back to purple now. The Eismon Scatterboat, joining his Eismon brother back to 1 with both the Eismons. It has been, I mean, they say it literally here. It has been long has been an effective card in decks that utilize trashing, but its ability to exchange a very large number of cards at level 4 has greatly reduced the usage rate of other cards with hand exchange effects. That explains it basically to a T. Why would you use any other card that draws you one or trashes one when you could draw three and trash two? So it's just the value for what it is just absurd. Nobody wants to kill it because the moment they kill it, they give you all the draw power, basically what you need.
It always
But
swings with
then
jamming.
it gets a free hit. So even if it doesn't die, that's a free hit, and your opponent doesn't want to touch the body. So it's like it's a conundrum that your opponent has to deal with. You don't have to deal with, unless you want to deal with it, which purple can do very easily. There's a lot of cards that you could just kill your own guys with. So it's absurdly good. So, and I understand limiting design space for like the purple decks in general. This does because you would never need to use anything. Now people have to supplement and use other things.
Well,
I think people are
actually,
thinking of like Doberman and things like that.
yeah, Doberman, Dark Lizardmon are the two most comparable replacements. It was funny. I was looking at replacement cards for all of these, banned and limited cards, because I know that's immediately what people are going to ask for.
Mm-hmm.
Gabumon and Gabumon, their inheritables actually don't have replacements at all.
Correct. They're literally
Like
only
that just goes to show how much they value those inheritables to the point where they didn't reproduce them enough. We've had on delete inheritable gain a memory and like inheritables that just help you
4
gain a
times.
memory if you played something from your trash or whatever. Like we have a bunch of those. We don't have a whole lot of inheritables, especially on level 3 bodies that draw and discard. And I think there's very good reason for that. Like even the starter deck Gabumon, the starter deck 16 Gabumon, it's still limited to once per turn. So like that just goes to show that even though there's no good comparable replacements, how strong these cards were. The only comparable replacement is probably Foscomon from BT13, where it triggers
Yeah,
at the end of your opponent's turn. You get a draw and discard. So
that
you
means your
could,
body has to live.
yes. So it does have its own set of drawbacks, its own risk reward to it, but that's the only other inheritable that we have that allows us to draw and discard. Um, and then as far as the only other purple Garurumon, we have the vanilla BT4 one. So
Mm-hmm.
you could kind of play that. I don't think it's a good idea, but you could at least do it.
Oh, they have the purple one that has the same inheritable draw one trash one.
Yeah, I mean you have that
Yeah.
this in the starter deck one. So like there's enough purple Gabumons to fill up the majority of your level 3 lineup. It's just it's not as good as
They're
it
not
once
good,
was. Yeah.
100%.
And
They're
like
definitely not the old ones
and
for
the
sure.
thing with if you're running a purple base Gurumon deck, which at this point I think come BT15, blue base is just going to be infinitely better.
Gaming.
Um but regardless, like in the meantime, if you're looking to build purple base, because the level 4s weren't touched, you just have to worry about your level 3s and that's it.
And the deck will run just fine. I promise you, it will be fine. You
It'll be
guys will
maybe
be.
a hair slower, but you still have a decent amount of cards to draw and discard and do everything you want and need.
Yeah, you lose a bit of consistency, but it's not. I don't think it's that big a deal. It won't matter in the long run. You guys will play just fine. You'll still kill us in 2-3 turns, easy.
Yeah,
Uh,
and Geo Gray, you just play more of the EX4 one, and then you maybe splash in
Starter.
a tenth champion with the starter deck one. I don't think people will still play the BT4 one just because needing 3 tamers in a deck where now you have one less tamer like card to set up your tamer, it's just gonna be a little bit harder to use. I don't think that one's gonna be good enough. Um
No, I don't
so
think so. I
I
think
think
it's
like
very bad.
honestly, because of the training cards, you're probably even okay at just 9 of the 2-color Geo Greymons that you have left. Just because you could slot in an extra training card and then boom, there you go.
Yeah, exactly. And it effectively becomes a champion because you can just find the champion you want and then Evo for free. So it's okay. I don't think none of these hits are detrimental to the point where you can't play the deck or it kills the deck completely. They're fine. You got everything will be okay. The scatter mode definitely does suck because of this essentially. I mean, all the purple cards for the most part, but they hit a lot of decks, a lot of purple decks.
Well,
But
the
that's
funny
where
thing is, This is just another card added to the BT7 death list because they've
Yeah,
banned
literally.
almost a lot of the cards that were actually banned and limited were from BT7, ironically enough.
Yeah, that's it. It's
And even
hilarious.
though, like, yes, this does suck for discard based purple decks, purple is more than just discard. So you could still do a whole bunch of other stuff, like just as an example, Beelzemon. This means absolutely nothing to Beelzemon. Beelzemon's still a competently good purple deck. Like, okay, so cool. You still have purple decks that you could play. It does suck for like stuff like Belfmon and decks that want to draw and discard, but I think Apocalypse just abused this way too much in combination with all of the low end Garurumon stuff just to turbo its trash to be able to play it by turn 2. A turn 2 level 7 that just builds itself up is absolutely absurd. And yes, it is unfortunate that Eismon had to suffer for Apocalypsemon sins, but that just goes to show that Eismon was just that good of a card that it was being ran to make Apocalypsemon even more broken than it seemed. Because I think if the deck wasn't as fast, people wouldn't be as hard pressed against it as they are. And everyone knows how good Apocalypse is, because that's literally what's topping in Japan by a very large margin. So maybe this is just their test to see if these cards that are
This
hit
is enough.
is enough. Because,
Yeah,
like I said, they can always just add more later.
yeah, they can always just drop an emergency one if they really think it needs more. I agree. I agree wholeheartedly with that sentiment. It makes sense. I'm not. I don't hate this ban. I do think this card has been absurdly good for a very long time.
And these are all
So
restricted to one. So you still can
you
at
still
least,
use it.
yeah, you can still play the one of, even though it sucks, but you still have it.
Oh, man, you can still sack your opponent out one time. You never know.
Yeah,
So
but the more surprising thing is the fact that this is the first time that they are actually lifting bans. So we haven't really seen them lift bans yet in Digimon, and this is the first time that we get that. So they unbanned or unrestricted 2 cards, which does mean they could potentially lift bans off other cards later. Not saying they're going to, just because I'm in the philosophy that usually when a card is limited, it's limited for a reason and keep it limited. But there's a couple of good reasons why I think that the cards that they unlimited are good. So the first one is Savior Huckmon. Their description is really weird, but basically the card was limited to begin with just because for the environment that it was in, it was just too strong of a card at being able to deal damage and close out games quickly. BT6 meta was completely different speed-wise and pace, like speed and pace-wise, than what we're currently experiencing. Like turn-wise, yes, they're still this very similar, but in terms of what a card is capable of doing, this card was just that absurd for Jesmon, at least in Japan. It didn't put up as good of numbers in North America, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't a strong card because we have effects like Savior Huckmon currently in the game that are running around at 4 copies, which is why they decided, hey, if other decks can have this same style of card at 4 copies, then maybe we could unrestrict it for Jesmon, who's not really performing super well. So maybe this revitalizes and recontextualizes what Jesmon can do to be a little bit more meta prevalent, which I think is very fair, because Jesmon as a deck still has that consistency issue just because Sistermons are white, the deck is red. Red cards search for red things, especially with training cards and memory boosts. So therefore, Jesmon reasonably can't utilize those types of cards, which ruins its consistency. So that's why I think, like, okay, Savior Huck is probably fine to come back. Do I still think it's a strong card? Yes. Do I think people are going to actually start building more towards it? Yes.
1000%.
And I think, like, because of how strong it was, what Bandai initially feared was the usability in other decks. Like, maybe that opens up new avenues for creativity. We already saw Dorbrickmon incorporate a little bit of Sistermon engine with just the one Savior Huckmon, just because the low-end Sistermon blocks, draw, and discard, and just draw cards, which is all Dorbrickmon wants. So, like, I think Savior Huck could have some interesting avenues in other places, maybe in a Gallantmon deck. That could be something very interesting to see as well. Like there's a lot of room for experimentation with Savior Huck being at 4 now. And then the second card that they unrestricted is a little bit more on the divisive side, I'd say, just because of the stigma attached to it, and that's going to be Tommy Himi, which is the main card that was used in blue hybrids. Their main explanation was because the on play was just really good at source stripping in the environment that he lived in. And there wasn't really any good counters or outs to it, and it made it very unbalanced and very one-sided in blue hybrid's favor because of the stun locking potential, to not only take away the opponent's offensive options, but the opponent's defensive options. Now we have playstyles and decks that can play around Tommy, and we have new abilities like the ability to redirect that isn't blocking, but it's still defending. So now blue hybrids has to deal with those types of effects, whereas before they didn't exist. So it just led to blue hybrids absolutely snowballing into being an absolute monster until BT9.
Yeah, he said it all. Like it was just too much for the time. Being able to do things like it one cost efficient, 3 cost, strip 3. Notice like the other card that does that is Sorite. That's 4 cost, strips a little bit more, but it's like it's not that dramatically different to the point where that is strong on its own. Just stripping 3 alone is good. Now you have an inheritable effect that can be procced every turn. It's just too much. So I do agree. There's plenty of things now in the game that can stop it very easily. The advent of being able to redirect. There's a little bit more tamer hate in the game at the moment. Not a lot, but there's still a little bit more. And there'll be decks that can gatekeep the deck pretty good. So I don't foresee this being bad at all. I think with some stuff coming in BT14, it'll be very strong, but I don't think it's going to be to the point where we'll be seeing it dramatically take the game by storm. I don't see that at all happening.
Especially not in Japan in the face of Apocalypse. Like, Apocalypse, I'm always going to say Apocalypse, that's just me. But yeah. Apocalypse, stripping Apocalypse does, like, borderline nothing because he slowly builds up his inheritables anyway. And, like, the inheritables are still in the trash, so you could just play another one. So, like, that's the problem with Apocalypse is, like, once you set up one, you're usually good for the rest of the game. And even though the mirror is the most interesting part, I don't think Tommy was to hit was to try to counter Apocalypse. That was not the goal. I think the goal with Tommy's unrestriction is the fact that, like, I don't think Bandai wanted to hit this card initially, but they kind of had to, and now they feel like the game, again, is in a completely different state from when the card was originally released and the environments that it was played in, where the card can come back and exist again. We know in BT14, we're going to be getting the Gomamon stuff that also wants to strip stuff down. So I think, like, this, in combination with some of the Gomamon stuff, is going to be an absolutely fantastic deck that Japan has never seen before because they didn't have Tommy at 4, and we kind of do. And I do like that those subtle differences in our metas that they're doing just because of the time difference on trying to hit these cards basically at the same time for both environments. And because ours is behind theirs, it puts us off parity, which I kind of enjoy those off parity moments. Because we already knew from, like, the get-go what BT13 was going to be all about, what was going to be good given the resources that we were lacking that Japan had. And we already knew, like, RB1, because it didn't do anything when it was first released before BT13, and now it's still not doing anything all the way up until their BT, like, 15, and they have the LM cards, and they're still struggling to make a foothold. Like, we kind of already knew this information, but now things are going to be shaking up, and who knows, maybe something can be discovered that wasn't previously, or maybe matchups are made that weren't existent before that might put other decks into a new category that they weren't previously in.
Yeah, I think we're in an interesting time. I'm very excited to see what happens. Um, one, because the meta we have currently, I think, is really good, very diverse. There's a lot of things you can play. Um, whereas in JP, it really wasn't like that. So I'm very interested to see what happens as we go forward, because we're literally uncharted waters. We have cards that are hit. We have cards that weren't. They had cards that weren't hit that we have now, and we have new cards coming off the list that are coming out. I'm very interested to see what that does. I don't know if it'll change too very much, but I think people are going to come up with some cool stuff, especially with like Savior. I think Savior opens up a lot of room for cool stuff.
Yeah, because who knows? Maybe Savior is going to be used more inside of Dorbikmon, as I already mentioned before. Or like any kind of Royal Knights deck, maybe Savior will do some stuff for just Jesmon. Open up new lines. Maybe the BT6 Jesmon might be actually playable again. Who knows? I don't think that's going to be the case
Uh,
precisely, but like a lot of
I'll
people
make
were looking
that
at the
one
starter
mine.
deck Jespawn just because his when
That's
attacking
what I think is
ability,
going to be absurd.
yeah, just because his when attacking ability isn't
Not
once
once
per
per
turn.
turn.
So it was obviously designed to be with Blitz, which Blitz is once per turn. But this creates a scenario where you could be like, okay, I'm at like one memory, or I'm at like 2 or 3 memory. I'm going to Digivolve into my Blitz off of this Jespawn, or off of the Savior. Then I'm going to swing, play a Sistermon, gain memory back because maybe it's the CL that gains memory back, unsuspend my Digimon. Maybe if I started at 3, Digivolve for 4, now gain that 1, that'll put me at 0. I can maintain turn, make an additional swing, play another one, Digivolve into something else, and like either just GX or just X, and then do some other crazy shenanigans from there depending on like what you're able to set up and the sistermons that you're seeing. So I do think like it does recontextualize a lot of things that weren't possible before, because I was almost thinking on like, well, if the Guilmon stuff is just that bad, not like that bad, but like maybe there's a way to work this into Guilmon, just to maybe like get all of the Gallantmon's not once per turn when attacking abilities off, and maybe that could be kind of crazy.
That could be pretty cool. I mean, I can already see this being insane just in Jesmon alone, because the new like the BT13 Jesmon line with that starter deck Jesmon and the new or the new unreleased the BT6 Savior, like, ooh man, I can see the disgusting combos because you're reducing the or you gain memory for playing sister bonds. So just gaining, you'll gain if you're just using the level 3 and level 4. That's 2 memory, and then that one on top of when evolving plays it, so you could effectively go into Savior for 1, then go into Jesmon. Like it just turbos the deck a lot faster. I think it's going to be pretty cool. I'm excited to test it out, and I've already started tweaking some decks to do so.
Yeah, I think like the big like Jespawn definitely got a big W from this, but I do think Blue Hybrids is probably like in the better position, just
Oh yeah,
because like if we look all the way back to BT9, Blue Hybrids wasn't necessarily the strongest deck, but that's because it also got limited. So Blue Hybrids was like around the 15th best deck in BT9. But looking at like the rest of BT9's like top decks, I honestly think Tommy at 4, it easily could have taken the 5th spot and have been the 5th best deck in BT9, just under all of the X antibody stuff. So you had stuff like Grandis, Alphamon, Garurumon, and Gaiomon, uh, all being played, and I think like all of those decks would have been able to beat and contend with Blue Hybrids. I also think like looking forward at like BT10, you get Alphamon, or not Alphamon, you get Cross Hearts, and you get Blue Flare, and you get Bloom Lord. Like, all of those decks probably were okay into into blue hybrids. Um, and like you could kind of just see like as a BT9, the shift and pace of the game changed kind of dramatically. Where I don't necessarily think blue hybrids would have done that well in this type of environment. I still think it would be a very good deck. It would probably be in the top maybe 10 decks. Probably still top every now and then, depending on the packages and engines you're going to be running it with. And again, I think like in BT14, because of the tools that we're getting in BT14, that blue hybrids actually could make a comeback because you have the Gomamon, that replays itself and helps strip. Then you have Zudamon Ace as an actual good comparable level 5 to Beowulfmon that, again, also strips and bounces and is really cheap, and it helps you turbo up into a level 6, which Beomon already helped you turbo up into a level 6 because of the cost reduction on its evolution, basically evolving for 1. Then you also have the training cards, which training, you could grab Tamers, which helps, again, with the overall consistency. Then you even have Bukamon, which is going to be the new BT14 egg to help give jamming. So you could use, like, Tommy into Lanamon, swing, holds that level 4 Digimon, and potentially Ace into Zudomon, just because that Lanamon is safe, and they're going to have to either A, delete it by attacking, or B, delete it by card effect. Otherwise, they could just, like, Korikaku, and then just start doing all of that crazy shenanigans that Blue Hybrid was known for.
Yeah, I'm excited. BT14 Blue Hybrid looks super good, especially with the Tommy up 4. I think it's looking pretty cool.
I actually
like he
think,
stated that.
yeah, I actually think it's going to turn more into a control deck rather than like a mid-range aggro deck that it kind of was, just because Blue Hybrids doesn't necessarily have the damage potential in their package, but they can still deal damage. So like you could use Mirage to be able to bounce something back to hand and then or burn their security depending on how you want to do it. But you could use Mirage to try to like stall out the opponent and force them into bad positions because of their hand size. And then you also have Ulforce if you're really trying to be more aggressive, just because he could play Tommy could continue to strip, and then you just do, just usual Ulforce shenanigans.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be cool. I think it's gonna be fun. There's a lot of interesting ways you can go around and build the deck. So I'm excited to mess with it. I know some people are not happy to see it, but that's okay. You guys can cry and moan. We'll just be enjoying the decks that we get to play because it's still not going to be absurdly broken. It'll be fine. There's plenty of decks that beat it very easily, so I don't foresee this being a bad idea. At the current moment, I could eat my words, and maybe somebody finds a way to break it. I don't think so, but you never know. Somebody might find something ridiculous with it.
Yeah, I think the only unfortunate thing to realistically come from this ban list is the fact that they kind of didn't really touch any of the other top decks. So we already know that Apocalypse or Apocaly, he's getting hit really hard. Garurumon on the purple side of things is getting hit pretty hard. But Garurumon as a BT15 in Japan, he's basically untouched. He's 100% fine. That may or may not be a problem, but yeah, that's already a very strong deck that basically didn't get any weaker. Then you have Anubismon. Anubismon wasn't using any of these cards previously. They're not going to use them now, obviously. So Anubismon is also another insanely strong purple deck that just did not get touched. And Sons of Chaos, which is the Lugamon deck, that also didn't get touched. Completely fine. So like the weird part is they tailored this ban list to hit a couple of like decks that are going to be good for the English format, and then for our BT14, and then they hit Apocalypse, and then that was kind of all this like ban and restriction kind of did. Yes, it made a couple of other decks a little bit weaker that were discard based that were relying on the Eismon stuff, but that's neither here nor there because like you have other things that you could play to at least replace it in some capacity. But as far as like the best purple decks, they're all not using them, so it's not like they actually matter in like the grand scope of things. Because in Japan right now, Red Black Greymon, that's still a very strong deck. Yellow Vaccine is still very strong. Shine Greymon's still very strong. Then you just have like in
Mirage is still
Mirage
good.
is still really strong. He was doing banger numbers in EX5. So like that goes to show like, oh, maybe they looked at that data and said, okay, maybe if Apocalypse gets hit, Mirage can start coming back up, and maybe that's not exactly what they want. Same thing with Shine. Maybe once Apocalypse gets hit, Shine starts going back up. So like they were looking at a couple of different avenues, and they were hitting cards on multiple different reasons and levels that we're not probably even thinking about. So I'm not gonna sit here and complain and say this deck list, or not deck list, this ban list was bad. I just think that they could have done more. But some of the cards are kind of hard to hit. So like if you just look at a basic Anubis list, like the most problematic card obviously is going to be Anubis, and then the second most problematic card is going to be Mervamon, because Anubis plays Mervamon for free. So it's just like, cool, out of those cards, what do you reasonably hit? Some people were throwing around Ignitemon. I don't think that's the answer. Like, it's a very hard deck to actually hit something. All of them are using Blue Marimon. I don't think that's the answer either.
No. It's not the first thing I think of when, wow, what should I touch when it comes to hitting Anubis Mon? I definitely don't think of Blue Marimon.
I
My
mean,
first
that's the
thought
level
was
5
just,
that they're all using consistently. That's the only
yeah,
reason, but they could easily just transition to like Lady Devimon as
could
just
be
an
literally
example.
any level 5 that just draws and trash. It doesn't matter what it
Or
is.
just not even
Really,
draws and trashes, just trashes.
yeah,
Like,
that too, yeah. It doesn't make a difference, really.
yeah.
Which is why the only, like you said, the problematic card would be Anubis, but they don't touch SRs or above. So, I mean, they kind of did the best they could following their normal ban, like, or restricted philosophy. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't hate it. I do agree with him. I think there could have been more, but I'm not opposed to what I'm seeing. It makes sense. They're future proofing some stuff. They're hitting some things that are good, like generic good stuff for a good chunk of decks. Purple definitely got the biggest hit at the moment. So right now, you're probably hating purple if you're playing it, but don't worry. Literally, come this next set, you guys are going to be eating good, so you'll be fine. And then EX5, you get 2 back-to-back sets of pure purple love. You guys will be golden. Um, I mean, they literally are the best decks at the current moment in Japan, all purple. So you guys will be golden. If you
You
want to,
want
if anybody would complain, it'd be the other colors because they're not getting nothing for
you
the
want to
XP
know
set.
my hot take?
What's up?
I've always hated purple as a color. Like, purple
We were
is
talking about
I'm
that.
just going to say purple is basically the Yu-Gi-Oh color in like both a good way and a bad way. Where like purple is probably one of the hardest colors to balance, just because there's so many different interchangeable moving parts and pieces that it's just like just like what I was saying with Anubismon. It's just like, cool, you hit one card around the problem, and then they just find another one. So it's just like, that's why I think purple is like just fine with getting hit, especially hit this hard, is because they find a way to be able to bounce back. It's such a resilient color, and it's one of the few colors design wise that is more mechanics based than any of the others, allowing it to have more freedom than any other color in the game. Despite blue, just for whatever reason, blue's where all the card draw is, so it doesn't really matter on blue side of things. But like, blue is not as mechanically rich as purple is in terms of
No,
the amount of cross synergy and cross support that you can make in a single purple deck. Like, in a single purple deck, you could have it use every single mechanic that purple has to offer, and it still just works. And I'm just like, that's crazy. It leads to some like insane combinations of cards that people like true deck crafters uh are in
Love it.
love with. And I think that's kind of cool, but at the same time, from a design and
Dangerous.
balancing perspective, that's probably your nightmare color.
That's why, like we were talking about it a little bit earlier. It's purple is the most dangerous color because it's so easy for them to just print a set of cards that is just a little too good, and then it turns purple into, like we're seeing with BT 14 and 15, and well, maybe less so 15, but uh, mainly EX5 and BT 15, or EX5 and BT 15, purple dominance, because they printed two back-to-back sets of good purple support.
Well,
And now look,
also, Apocalypse mills the opponent's deck,
abuses it too.
and purple is just like, hey, you fed me. Cool, thank you.
Exactly. So it's like it just works, and to a level where the other decks will not be able to compete, because once a lot of other decks cannot use their trash. Once it's gone, it's gone. Purple doesn't have that problem. You can just bypass that and just say, yeah, I'll find a way. I'll get it to work. And it will work because they can make it happen. And it's cool from the player perspective, but it's not cool from, I assume it's probably, like he said, a nightmare for the designers, because now they're looking at this and they're probably like, dang, we really messed that up. Because it's cool now that we get to see a lot of purple dominance, because we haven't seen it too much. We've had a few decks like Belfamon, and I guess if you count Arrestor German superior, like if you count that, I mean maybe, but other than that, I mean there's not a lot of purple decks doing extremely well. Uh, I mean, aside from this random Mervamon player, but that that comes and goes. That guy probably just had a very good day. He played out of his mind
I mean,
that
it's like
day, and just
Mervaloop, or not Mervaloop, Millith. Like,
yeah.
I don't think that deck is like insanely gangbusters, but like, it can do well against the right matchups.
So I'm all for it. I'm happy. The list I think was really good. I think like he stated and I stated, purple is a very scary color to mess with. They have to be very careful with a lot of things they do. Like they can do a lot of stuff willy nilly with all the other colors, because they're kind of not necessarily, like a lot of them are shoehorned into like certain aspects. Like red, you usually think of aggro, and green is more like evolution, cost control, and things like that, suspending. But like purple doesn't have a guaranteed mechanic besides like the whole milling and trashing, but they do everything. They have ways to get security plus. They have ways to swing multiple checks. They have ways to unsuspend. They have ways to slam a million bodies on the board. It does everything. Like there's no effect that you can't find in purple that you can't find in any other color, because they're all in purple. Now they're spread far and few between, but you can do just about anything in a purple deck. So it's cool from like me, even as a spectator watching. You're like, wow, when like Mervamon goes off, that is a cool turn to watch. Like just see it play off. But from the person playing on the opposite end, probably not so much fun, because you're just sitting there like, yeah, cool. You gain how much memory?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Like,
That's
cool.
why I said purple is like
A
the
Yu-Gi-Oh
Yu-Gi-Oh
effect.
color, because it's just
Yeah.
like you do just kind of like, only in purple decks are your turns way longer than any other color. Like, what's the most complicated blue thing that I can do? It literally is like in a deck like Mirage, where it's just like, I'm
Yeah.
going to move out of raising, digivolve into level 4, digivolve into level 5, bounce your level 4, gain 2 memory, digivolve into level 6, bounce your security, gain more memory, swing twice, digivolve using burst, bounce Thomas
See,
back to hand, swing again. Like, you could line
that's
up a lot of
more like
swings, but
sequencing rather
yeah.
than like actual skill based. Like purple is definitely hardcore. Like if you want to be like show that you're outright better than your opponent skill wise, you probably play like purple decks at the moment currently, because those decks, they require so much more foresight and thought than just playing Greymon dot deck. Like I can pick up a Greymon, any great version of Greymon. I guarantee you, I can pick up any version of Greymon, and once I've seen what the hand my I know how to play it, and there's not very much room for deviation.
Yeah,
But
like
purple, there's
even
bajillion
just
ways.
Belphamon. Like Belphamon is not the most straightforward deck compared to a lot of other Digimon deck. You have to line up very specific things, and if you play in a particular order of operations, like there's a lot of micro decisions inside of a lot of purple decks that do make them excel in the hands of good players. Um, but yeah, like for the most part, your turns sometimes in like the more combo heavy purple decks, they can run a little extra long because of like just the sheer amount of actions and interactions you're trying to do.
Yeah, it's cool and it's fun to see, and I'm excited for these next few sets, even if they're all purple dominant. I don't really care. I think it's cool because the decks that are coming out are just look fun to play.
I'm excited
Um,
for Lugamon. Give me that dog.
yeah, exactly. It looks fun. Like Lugamon, even the Anubis font, that deck looks fucking cool to play. Um, I'm also just there's a lot of decks that I'm just excited for, and I think it's gonna be fine. I think we all just need to chill, and wait, and see how this actually affects us.
Yeah, but
Um,
calling this ban list bad, I think is
no,
not
you're cap.
warranted. I don't think it's warranted at all. I think for what they are given with and the restrictions that they're imposing on themselves, I think this was literally the best that they can do with the information that they had. Cause like I'm just thinking about like in Japan, like I know we're not necessarily in Japan, but I'm just trying to think like what's actually going to change for them. Like maybe because Apocalypse isn't as absurdly strong, maybe that allows more decks that aren't purple or trash based to be able to thrive a little bit more. And I think that's like the shakeup that they might need. And even just for us in our BT14 environment, I can't necessarily sit there and trust Japanese data 100% anymore. Just because our ban and restriction list is different. Like I'm already sitting there and I'm theory crafting blue hybrids. Like what has this world come to? And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just sitting there and I'm just like the fact that I'm curious and interested to see what the revitalization of this deck can do excites me. And I think that's the big takeaway that Bandai wants is that more excitement. And I get that comes more from the unbanning rather than the banning side of things. But like even just from the banning side of things, okay, what does these changes have on the impact of the game? I see less Belphamon. Cool. I don't care. I see a little bit
Yeah.
less Shine Greymon. Sure.
Cool.
Cool.
Like,
That sounds like a win to me. Because Shine Greymon right now in BT13 has about 1/3 of all of the current toppings. He's currently just that good, and we don't even have the training cards yet. So I'm just like, he's gonna be fine. He's gonna be fine.
yeah, these
Same
decks are
thing with
golden.
Mirage. Like I'm excited to play a more powerful Mirage because of the training cards. And I do think like even though it does suck, a good Mirage player still is probably going to take that deck just as far as it could in Japan.
It's okay. With the advent of the egg, it makes it more those level fives more valuable anyway, and they all
Oh, I'm
shift away
so
from it anyway.
that
So it
egg
doesn't
is
matter.
so disgusting. Like I see why. Like in my initial ban and restriction predictions, I didn't even think of the egg because of how excited I was to want the egg. I also didn't think about the training cards just because again of how much I wanted the training cards. A lot of the cards that I was looking at were either A, cards that I knew were just straight up stupid, or B, things that I kind of wanted to see hit in some capacity. And I even left room for like, okay, if they don't hit Marcus, which is obviously the problem card, then they're going to have to hit something around Marcus, which they obviously did. And that
I
kind
could
of was
say
the
cool.
theme of like a lot of their ban and restrictions is they don't want to hit the problem, they want to hit the cards around the problem, so the problem isn't as much of a problem.
See, I could say wholeheartedly, I hit like four of my predictions from a bingo list. Honestly,
I think
because
I
I
was a
knew
half.
I I I called six because I'm lumping all the training cards in one because they're all the same essentially.
Yeah.
Um, but so out of the eight, oh no, out of the six that I thought, four of them was right. So I'm pretty. I knew that I had a good feeling that like Savior would come off for some reason. I don't know why. It was hopium. I won't lie, because I was talking to some people about Fenrir Lugamon, and I'm like, I mean, they have a straight up effect. If they're
Oh,
willing to print that on a card going forward, why would this not come off? But that was like hopium, so I won't count that. So three. I'll say three of the six, so 50%. Because I did call Eismon, because I was like, if they're not going to hit Guru X, Eismon got to go, one way or the other. I didn't think they would go as far as to hit the rookies. I won't lie. That was
I think that was a
definitely a
double
shock to me.
fold to also hit Garurumon. So
Yeah,
like that was literally a two birds with one stone type situation.
so that one definitely caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting the rookies, but it makes sense. So I got Eismon, I got Geogray because I mean, we talked about it earlier.
Yeah,
Geogray
it
got to
was either
go.
Geogray or Rise was the more logical
Yeah,
one.
those
And
are
I
the
think a
two
lot
hits
of
for
people
me.
were more on the Geogray side than the Rise.
Because and on top of that, it's a twofer because it hits multiple decks, not just one. So it makes
Right.
sense. I got that one, and then I did get what's the other card? I did get the mock Galgamon. As weird as it was, I did guess this just looking at JP results
I totally didn't. On my bingo card, I was
because
probably about. I knew
because
ideas on what they would hit. I didn't know exactly what they would hit. For Apocalypse, it was the Eismon. I did get that one. I did get, if it wasn't Marcus, it was Geo. So I got that one. I totally missed the ball on Mirage. And then I knew something was going to get hit from Garurumon. I obviously predicted it would be Garurumon X Antibody from EX5, but instead it ended up being the rookies, which the rookies also doubled into the Apocalypse. So, like,
it makes sense.
it's not like I was like dead wrong in my train of thought. It's just the cards were slightly off from where
Yeah,
I was thinking.
like I thought it would either be well, I guess three of so I guess I got most of the list correct. From my guess because I knew they weren't going to hit Apocalypse Mon. I knew they weren't going to touch those guys. So it makes the most sense to hit engine pieces because that is what they're probably going to do. I didn't think the rookies at all. Those definitely flew over my head, so I'll take that over. So I'll take that L there. But I knew Geo Gray. I guessed it was either going to be the trainings or something in the decks. So, for example, Galgamon, I did guess this one because he's just infinitely better than the other two. I don't even think it's close, by the way. He is just infinitely better than them. And then I did guess Scatter as well. It's just funny to see both Scatter modes both to one, or both Eismons to one.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, it's just like BT7 just had so many problematic cards in it. It's actually crazy. I think out of all of the cards that are currently banned or limited, BT7 has the most, which is
It is pretty
scary.
terrifying.
Yes. Like, and that's not even to say like, oh, BT7, like, yes, that was the closest that we probably had to a tier 0 format, but like looking back at BT7, the individual cards weren't necessarily insane. It's just they grew to be insane.
See that it's because they were in a vacuum in the set. It wasn't insane at the time, but as more stuff became like come out, more stronger things that can go in tandem with those things, they just compile into even harder like steamrolls, like with Eismon, thing like decks that can abuse it even harder, like Belphamon and things like that. So it's like they just compounded into bigger problems. And BT7, a lot of cards from BT7 definitely hit that margin where the cards as individually were not that great when BT7 was out. But as the game kept going more, there was more uses for those cards. And for some reason, BT7 just has the most of them, I think. I don't. They just had such high value cards.
Yeah, so as far as let's play a little fun game here. Um
Gotcha.
as
Let's see
far
if you.
as cards that you want to see come onto the list, what is a card you want to see basically we'll play it like this. We'll play it as ban, limit, unrestrict.
Okay, that's easy. I already know my ban. This is the easiest ban. I still want HPD gone. The games where you see HPD, they are so absurdly one-sided that it's like you can literally draw HPD or hit it in security and auto win. That to me is just a problem. Just get rid of the card and then start making green good again. Normal, like another, like every other deck. I can't stand HPD. Like if it wasn't apparent. Um, Shout out to Risu because God, man, HPD is crazy. Let's see. So you said ban, limit, limit. Man, dude, limit is hard. See, I want to say the trainings because I think they're so absurdly good, but I also love them, so it's hard for me to say that I want them gone. I almost want something from the Greymon stuff to get hit because we're just gonna get so much of it. Because I don't want to say the cop out answer and just say like Garuru X or something. I think that's not. That's pretty invalid, and that's a cheap shot basically. I could see something like something from the Greymon package getting hit. I don't know what it would be. Maybe well, they won't hit the level 6s. Clearly, they won't hit any SR. So go ahead and throw that out the window.
Which means they won't hit the new rookie.
Correct. So my only thing I could think of would be a level 5 maybe, or I don't know what level 5 would be the one to hit though. Would be just the raid one because he's just so absurdly good compared to the others. But then they just default to the other one, so it kind of I don't know. Greymon's a hard one to hit, but I would say I would cop out and just say a generic answer from Greymon because I can't think of anything specifically that I would want to touch. Limit at least to one because I'm also not a person that likes hitting cards to one. I either want them gone or in the game, one or the other. I really don't like the whole one because it leads to things being sacky, and I don't like that. Hence HPD and things like that, or even the Greymon X. That one, the amount of times I auto won at my regional when I drew Greymon X was insane. I mean, actually, every game I had him, I won. Now that I think about it, but so I'm gonna cop out and say that for now because I can't think of anything. Y'all gotta have to hold me to it.
You're referring to the BT11 one, correct?
Yes, Greymon X.
Because there's the BT9 one that's just medium.
That's true. Yeah, he's okay.
I mean, the free evolution versus the paying for one is fine. The security attack plus and DP is fine, but I think like the protections on BT11 one are a little insane.
Yeah, they're too absurd. They're way too absurdly good. So I'm gonna cop out and say something from Greymon Engine, and then you said unrestrict.
Yes,
that's cool. That's a lot of fun. What would I unrestrict from this?
I already have my answer, and it's the answer nobody's probably going to be expecting.
You're going where Garurumon?
As much as I would love to, I know
I want Jet Silvermon back. I don't care what you all say. No. I want that card back.
No.
You can complain all y'all want. I want all y'all to bitch about. I want that card back. If Tommy can come, Jet Sylphie can come back.
No, you're not allowed to have Jet Sylphie.
Yeah, that's my choice.
Okay, so in fairness for Jet Sylphie staying restricted, if she was unrestricted, Yellow Hybrids goes back to being the best yellow deck. And that's something Bandai knows and doesn't want.
I feel like Shine is still a lot better.
I don't consider Shine a yellow deck. I consider Shine a Shine deck. Shine has transcended color at this point with how he is designed. He is his own entity who just so happens to exist in yellow.
Is he red yellow or yellow red? He's red yellow. Okay.
He's red yellow. He's supposed to be red primary, yellow secondary, but everyone treats him yellow primary and red secondary. But yeah,
so, I think I'm going Jet Sylphie. It's either that or Shoutmon X4.
I think Shoutmon X4 is a fair one. Like, as stupid as that card is, don't get me wrong, as stupid as that card is, it does create another cross divide on, like, okay, I have so many different ways to play cross, which is the way I play it. And like I think there's a decent amount of security bombs where it's just like, okay, maybe it's not going to be as good, but that's none of those. He's not the one I'm picking. Garurumon's not the one that I'm picking. For
Go
my
ahead.
unrestrict.
I'm interested. Are you gonna do Doru Greymon?
No, so my unrestrict, this is where it is going to be coming out of left field, is probably reinforcing memory boost. I think like 6 memory for that card, where the current state of the game is just a lot. The extra recovery right now doesn't matter as much. The rigging of security does kind of suck, and it is really good on the memory generation, especially hit from security. But with how swingy the game is, I think like
Giving them too
reinforcing
much memory
actually
kills
could.
you.
I mean, it's yellow. What's
Oh,
yellow?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying you playing reinforcing could just straight up kill you.
No,
So
that's what
I
I
could
mean.
agree. I
That's
100%
why I
agree.
said like, okay, reinforcing out of everything that's currently limited to one probably is the least
I like that one.
egregious one.
I'm down.
Um
I like it.
and then as far as a card that I want to see, so that's my unlimit.
Gotcha.
My limit to one, I'm probably gonna have to like. I kind of said this in my video. I'm gonna be picking on the 2 cost tamers. So either Cool Boy or Analog Youth. I
You
think
know,
like those
that makes
high levels
sense.
of efficiency cards for a lot of decks is just too good, and it helps propel and accelerate.
I'm
Um,
changing my answer for the limit to Cool Boy. I'm copping out. I hate Cool Boy. Fuck that guy.
so like even though they're not doing much right now, they still always have that potential to be borderline busted.
All
So
it takes is
like
one good engine to come out, and then out of nowhere, that guy is automatically broken again.
yes. So like Cool Boy or Analog is going to be my limit to one. And then my straight up ban, um this is another really out of left field. I actually want Chimeramon from BT8 to be banned.
Chimera?
Yes. So my reasoning is because any deck that can abuse being able to play level 4 Digimon for free or just keep their level 4 Digimon around has the right to abuse that card to basically just steal games out of nowhere and present extra damage and pressure that realistically should never be there to begin with.
Okay, I can see where that logic comes from. That's very different. I wasn't. I mean, of course, I was never expecting that. One, because nobody uses the card, but I can see how that can be very swingy and why you would want that. So I can see it. I can see it. I dig it.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't like there it's so hard to actually want to like just hardcore ban a card because you obviously picked the easiest one that I would want to get banned. I would double vote for HPD getting banned just because of like, oh, if Mega Digimon Fusion could get banned, HPD has just as much grounds to get banned as Mega Digimon Fusion, especially with the way Bloom works. Just because now they're turning the downsides of cards into upsides. So it's just like, cool, now you're basically, it's like I described in my video with Deathslinger. On like another card I wouldn't mind seeing get hit, but probably isn't going to get hit. You're
Nah,
turning positives into super positives. And I think once you hit super positive territory, that's when things start breaking.
I you know how I feel about HPD. I hate it every single time I see it. I'm either extremely excited because I'm winning or I'm extremely unhappy because I'm losing. There's never an in between. There's never I have never seen somebody use HPD and lose. If
I have. It's very rare though, and like,
well, you must be
it
one of
is
the sus
not.
bad guys,
Yeah,
man.
it
I have
is
never
not a
lost
common
against it.
situation.
I just like just like you said. If if what's it called Mega Digimon Fusion is gone, why is HPD in the game? It does the same exact thing. Yes, it's limited to specifically green, but why does it matter? It's just the same exact thing. And there are cards that abuse it so hard. that it makes it a borderline, not borderline, it makes it oppressive when it goes off. I just can't stand that card. Anything that gives you that much value for the cost of 0, and you can't tell me the cost of suspending something because green wants to do that. That is literally built into the decks. Your decks love it when your cards are suspended. So that is not a cost. If you tell me it's a cost, you don't understand what green does, and that's fine. You don't have to understand, and you could be wrong. This is the one time your opinion is invalid. It is wrong. Like, I don't agree at all. That card needs to go, and then green can actually start rebuilding again.
It's trying. It's got insects.
Yeah, and look how they have to be. They have to be scared because of that card still being a thing.
No, I do kind of still get like they're not like directly designing around HPD, but the fact that HPD is always in the back of their head automatically presents it as a problem, which is why I think like anyone who wishes HPD gone, it's valid and it's warranted. Like, even though green really needs to be thrown a bone because there's a total of one good green deck at this point that's left, and that is Bloom.
That's because of that card.
It's partially because of that card, and it's partially because of just the interactions that it has versus all of the other green decks. Like, I get that we might still have Grandness if the promo wasn't limited, but Bandai's trying to reduce the amount of OTKs. Even though I already pointed out the ironic thing is they're making more of them, but that's a different subject for a different story. On a different day. Yeah, but like, I don't know. It's in Digimon. It actually is kind of like the way they have their ban and restriction list set up. It is very hard to be like, what actually should get banned? I mean, we obviously know the answer, but what realistically is going to get banned is always an interesting question. And like every single ban and restriction list, I haven't really been unhappy with, which is the funny part. No. Like, I see all of these people get really sad and upset about it, and like and mad. And the one thing that I take away to not feel those negative emotions is it all stems from expectations. So if you don't have any expectations, you're not going to be disappointed or angry or upset. And like, I just took it as it was. I'm just like, I can agree with their reasoning, even though some of it wasn't the best written. And I can agree that like where they're going with their mindset on how they're limiting it is smart also from a business aspect, just because, yes, they don't want to negatively impact the sales of future sets. But the odd thing is Bandai already has their money at this point, which is something I don't think anyone actually realized. They already have their money for BT14. They probably already have the money for EX5 as well, just because stores have to order so far in advance, because they need to know how much they're going to be printing, and that's just the dynamic that they have with the distributor in the stores. So Bandai already has their money for the most part. It's just anything extra would be nice, just because they want the distributor going back and say, hey, can we have a little bit more of this? And Bandai's just like, yeah, we could dip into like our 10% reserve.
Okay, exactly. They don't care.
Yeah, so Bandai already has their money, so it's not necessarily as much of a money thing, as like it might actually be more for the secondary market and a value thing, because they already know their cards don't have a whole lot of value for this game, or if they don't, I'd be shocked if they didn't. Like TCG companies like to know that their game has value, but they don't want to acknowledge it because they legally can't.
Yeah, the moment they do, they get into a lot of trouble. So
yeah, so they know what gets us excited, and they don't want to try to take that away as much as they possibly can, which is why hitting low rarity cards usually is the smarter thing. And half the time, if you look at deck design in Digimon, a lot of the powerhouse cards are actually on the lower rarities. Like, look at Marcus, It's a rare. It's a rare that does free evolution and turns itself online for one memory. It's like, yes, that's kind of insane.
Look at HPD. It's like common, or is it uncommon?
Yeah, look at Ice Wall. Ice Wall is a rare. Like, a lot of these super powerhouse cards are actually on the lower rarity side, which goes to show the strength of like Digimon's card design overall. When we sit there and we think, like, for Anubismon, it's just like, what card could we or would we reasonably want to hit that fits inside of Bandai's like little parameters that they set aside for them, that we're slowly understanding the more they ban and limit cards. And it becomes this really hard debate and discussion. And I think that's kind of the fun and healthy part of the game, is just having good discourse. Granted, whether Bandai's actually going to act on that is a completely different story. Maybe if it gets too out of hand, again, we could always have an emergency ban, and now we could always have unbans as well, which I think opening that avenue definitely is a good thing. So
Yeah.
that way, okay, Gabumon was really bad now, and maybe in the future he could get unbanned, and same thing with Eismon Scatter Mode. I think Eismon is just forever hit to one. That card's just absurd. But Eismon Scatter Mode could come off reasonably, depending on the right meta situation and scenario. So it's
Yeah.
not like everything is doom and gloom. They did kind of give us a sliver of hope, even though a lot of people seem to be disappointed with this restriction.
I mean, to be fair, people are going to be disappointed. I understand from the people's perspective, people that are, invested in these decks or invested in like looking forward into the future, and they're like, wow, I really can't wait to play with this purple stuff. Or there are some people that are excited to play Apocalypse Mon and things like that. So I understand from their perspective that this sucks to them. But you can't look at it just from an individual's perspective. It's fine. You can be angry. You are more than welcome to be upset. There's nothing, your opinions are valid. You can be upset about this. There's nothing wrong with that per se, but you have to look at it from the overall perspective of the game. And these ban lists are for competitive players. So if you care about this ban list, that means you're trying to play on a competitive level. These cards hurt the competitive landscape of the game. So if you cannot see that, then maybe you're not playing competitively. And you are more than welcome to play with the cards. You don't have to play competitive.
Or you're just thinking from a different perspective, because
Yeah,
there's also that. It's just like, I get
that's
it, as
true.
a diehard purple player, like seeing
It sucks.
Icemon Scatter Mode sucks. My brother texted me earlier at work, and he's like, Austin, they hit Icemon Scatter Mode. What do I do? And I'm just like, well, here's a list of replacement cards. Like, the cool thing is, all of these cards kind of have a replacement. The ones that really don't are the rookies, and even then they still kind of do. Like, you could run
And they will get them too.
Costcomon, you could run Gabumon, starter deck 16. Like, there's things that you could do, and that's what Bandai's trying to do, is not push you to be this linear in terms of the options that you have available to you. They want you to be able to open things up a little bit more, just because there's not a de facto one answer. Even though, yes, deck design is a little bit more on the linear side, I digress, and there's still room for off-branded tech and tools, and that's what Bandai's trying to enforce, is different types of off-branded tech and tools.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm okay. Like I said, I think everybody, we just need to chill. We'll see what happens. For the purple players, sorry guys. Better luck next time. Don't worry, you guys are going to be eating good anyway. Coming this soon, as I said earlier. So, you guys will hate it for. Actually, you don't even see it in this meta. You'll only see it literally when we go into the next set.
Yeah, which Lugamon's going to be the next big purple deck, and that deck is
And
untouched.
you guys will be golden. So it's okay. I get it. You Merva players and things like that. Sorry, I don't know what to tell you. Um, I I feel bad for y'all. The love goes out to you guys. You guys are over there doing the Lord's work. But it's all good. I think it'll be all good. This is better for the entirety of the game rather than just the individuals. So y'all got to take the bullet for the team this time.
Yep, because believe me, green's had plenty of hits. Blue definitely has had plenty of hits. Yellow had its fair share of lickens. So, and I get purple is one of the ones that's been hit probably the most, but again, has the most space to be able to abuse a lot of its tech and tools more than some of the other colors. But I don't think this is doom and gloom. I do think this is for the
No.
betterment of the game, and we as a community will be growing from this, and the game will be growing from this as a whole as well. And I think this is a fantastic place to leave off things on a high note. I definitely know that ban and restriction lists are usually pretty divisive in terms of like the ramifications of everything and stepping back and all of the different angles to be able to tackle all of the different opinions and viewpoints. So I do appreciate everyone staying as long as they did towards the end of this episode. I know this might be a little bit on the longer side, but there was just a lot to discuss with just this one topic. So I want to thank everyone again for listening, and if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to support the podcast by sharing it with others on social media, making sure to leave a like, comment, rating, review, follow, subscribe, all the other social media stuff, so that way you don't miss a notification on when the podcast goes live on your platform of choice. And I want to thank everyone once again, because without you, we wouldn't really be doing this, and we will see you next time.